Aborting more than 1 of every 4 pregnancies, creating human clones, eliminating our elderly with euthanasia. Is this how we should deal with human life? Find out how you can make a difference in changing our culture in this edition of Life Matters. Our host, Brian Johnston, has been a teacher at every academic level, from adult education and junior college down through high school, junior high, and even 5th and 6th grade. As is so often the case with teachers, he has also coached. Many on the California pro-life team call him the Life Coach. Today, you'll find out why on Life Matters. And now here's our host, Brian Johnston.
Well, hi, welcome back to Life Matters, your program on life, culture, and the very real battle of ideas. And I'm at the Students for Life conference in San Francisco, which was a follow-on to the Walk for Life in San Francisco. So if you hear some echoes or people coming in and out, it's because we're doing something here where a lot of people are doing the same thing, and that's standing for life. And I have an old friend, Joe Langfeld, who works with Human Life Alliance out of Minnesota. And they're great folks. A lot of the stuff they'll give away, I probably shouldn't say that.
You should say that.
I should say that. But Joe and I have been talking about culture and the battle for our culture. And, that's what we talk about on Life Matters. So, Joe, let's talk a little bit about what Human Life Alliance does and why you focus the way you do on this message, the way you do.
Well, we're a pro-life organization, but how we exist, why we exist, and the purpose for our existence is to tell people about the dignity and personhood of any person on the planet here. But how we do that is through creating a lot of informational materials, whether they be print, whether they be video, whether they be online through social media. We're looking to engage the culture, but we engage the culture through particularly secular means, because when we go onto a college campus and we're trying to talk about abortion or the humanity of the preborn child, the last thing they want to hear from us is, what does God tell them? So we engage them on a philosophy or on a very simple scientific level to just kind of break down what they've learned or really not learned in this culture, the basic rhetoric that is empty and hollow.
That's right, and I'm so glad you take that approach. It really is the approach of the right to life. It's what our founders, who are extraordinary people, when they founded this nation, they asserted that the right to life is a self-evident truth, that this is something that you can see in nature, and then it's revealed in nature and the laws of nature. It's very important. Most of us in the pro-life movement have a particular faith that's motivating us, and that's a good thing. I will not slight anyone's motivation, even if they're not of my faith. But their goal of that motivation is to restore protection for the vulnerable that can't protect themselves, and that's the goal of our movement. So I'm really pleased at how you communicate that and the importance of impacting culture. Tell us some other things about the cultural aspect of the right to life as you see it.
Well, we're trying to engage a culture that is actually post-Christian in this nation and certainly around the globe. So we're not only just dealing with the child in the womb and trying to get that information out, the humanity, the personhood of that child, kind of the gruesome realities of abortion as well, because people don't know what that is, what kind of violence that brings to a family, whether to be the mother, to the child itself that is torn apart in the womb, or whether to the father, or to siblings and others. So we talk about that. But we also deal with all the way through teen abstinence, sexual issues, all the way up through euthanasia and assisted suicide. Because if you make life cheap on one end with abortion, guess what? The culture has no choice but to say life is just as cheap on the other end, no matter what your age.
It's one of my passions, is the end-of-life debate that people aren't getting. So I'm very pleased that you're getting that out there. And you had mentioned that we live in a post-Christian culture. I have to agree. But people don't realize that Western civilization actually is built on a unique idea. Western civilization is not about Doric and Ionic and Corinthian columns that you see on the covers of those books. Western civilization is different than other cultures for one basic reason. They saw that human beings have a spark. There's something inside a human being, so we're not mere animals. We're not smart animals. This, if you go back to the Greeks knew that, and they asserted that. They're the ones that founded humanism. They saw it through a glass darkly. But if you look at the history of Western civilization, anthropologists will tell you it started with the Greeks, but not just with democracy and voting. It started with the Hippocratic Oath, where the doctor swore, I will not kill another human being, even when I have the power to do so, even in the name of compassion, even if asked. I will not kill another human being or a human baby. The reason is that there's something about human beings, that we're not animals. That's the premise. And again, the Greeks and even the Romans, the pre-Christian Romans, held this through a glass darkly. When Christianity, you might say, took over the culture, Christianity also affirmed the Hippocratic Oath, and affirmed because of the imago Dei, that we're made in the image of God. It clarified why we're different. We're made in the image of God. But you don't have to be against euthanasia or against abortion. If you're not a Christian, you can actually see that self-evident truth. And our founders, again, did such a great job of addressing that. So again, in addressing culture, I'm so proud of how you guys in HLA going after communicating this to our culture. What are some other things we were talking about earlier? Tell me.
Well, one of the things, just following right up on your comments there, was how we're dealing with doctors, nurses, the medical establishment. It's a sad thing today that they no longer take the Hippocratic Oath when they're graduating. It's sad,
right.
What did it say in the Hippocratic Oath? It would say that they would not perform or issue a plesiary, which is kind of a chemical abortion.
That's right.
And now today, we're going back to that.
Back to that.
And
yeah.
what a horrible thing. One of the authors in one of our publications who writes about end-of-life issues wrote a letter to his doctor saying, if I should ever ask you not to treat me, if I should ever ask you to end my life, no, I am not in my right mind.
Bingo.
So I would never ask you to violate your oath and what you went to school for, to treat, to heal, to help, not to harm. So we struggle with that, particularly in this culture now, because if abortion, the choice to rip a child apart in a mother's womb, is there, then who decides the worth of another human being in our culture as they approach whatever their end of their life is?
That's right. And we're actually sitting in San Francisco as we speak, and people know that San Francisco is almost notorious for the Golden Gate Bridge jumpers. Now, those people want to kill themselves, but should we go push them? What is the reason we don't want people jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge or off of a tall building in your city? It's not to keep the sidewalks clean. That's not the reason it's against the law. It's not because we're tired of fishing bodies out of the San Francisco Bay. The reason it's wrong is because that person is not in their right mind. They have emotional issues that need to be addressed, and the same is true with assisted suicide. They might be sick with some other illness, but the desire for suicide is the number one indicator that they need emotional help first and foremost, and killing them is not the answer. We're going to come back in a little bit. Again, you're listening to Life Matters Radio and podcast. And you can find out more information on Life Matters at lifematters.life. That's lifematters.life. Or if you're in California, go to californiaprolife.org. You can find out about the challenges in California. And the rest of the nation, go to nrlc.org. That's nationalrighttolife.org. And we'll be right back after this.
You're listening to Life Matters.
Power.
You're pro-life and you want to defend your position, but you're not sure what to say. That's pretty common. So get the facts you need to back up your pro-life position with the Power of 7 app. The Power of 7 gives you effective pro-life replies to 7 of the most common pro-abortion arguments. It's simple, it's easy to use, and it's free.
Power of 7.
Download it now at thepowerof7.org. The Power of 7, the number 7.org.
And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
Well, we're back at Life Matters, and we're at the Students for Life conference in San Francisco, California. And I am talking to Joe Langfeld. And he worked with Human Life Alliance. They have some great literature on the life issue. What I really like, though, is the inherent stories that are built into the literature, because that's how we reach other human beings. We want a story. We want to connect. I'm a big fan, as we've talked about before, about literature, but specifically film. But a lot of your stuff is a meme. We won't talk about memes at length here, but meme is actually a very old word. It's come into use a lot. But people like memes because they're miniature stories. So tell us a little bit about why that's important, how you do that at HLA.
Well, one of the things that moves people is somebody else's story. I can give you a lot of facts and figures about the unborn child and what's going on in the culture and how medicine recognizes what science says. But the reality is, where people's hearts are changed and minds get moved, is when they hear somebody's story. So we'll, in our publications, print these stories of women who regret their abortion or they're glad they kept their child. I mean, one of the first times I opened up an email working for Human Life Alliance was a young lady who had responded to our campus piece. People say today they're not sure if kids read anymore on paper, and it's just simply not true. They do. But this young lady's email response was, "I've been looking for you for 2 years." Wow. So we had done a distribution on a college campus, actually here in California, and she received our piece when she was a young lady, and she stuck it in her backpack, and it found its way into her closet floor is the short of it. And all of a sudden, a year and a half later, she finds herself pregnant. Didn't know how it would happen. That's always the shock. It's the only thing we know how it actually happens. It's still a miracle. But she called and she said, "I wanted to reach you and say," and we had just done another insert into a student newspaper on the campus she was at. 2 years ago, I got this piece, didn't think I needed it, but I kind of saved it, and I found myself pregnant. And I used your piece to convince my mother that I shouldn't have to have an abortion.
Wow.
You know, so the power of paper, the power of a printed word, the power of an image on a page that would be lifeless with a little color and an interaction in a different way. So cinema is great, but print can do the same. We hear that, we get the same kind of responses on those end-of-life issues as well. For right now, when I started at HLA 15 years ago, we had daily calls of young women seeking abortion because we're doing so much work on college campuses. Today, almost always these calls start with a question and a comment. And the question is, can you help me? I think they're killing my mother. And it's a sad thing when a sibling calls and they don't have medical power of attorney and somebody else does, and they're struggling to keep mom alive, to get treatment for her on some level. And I thought it was bad dealing with the families that need this help and can be locked out because they don't have a good advance directive. We got a call from a mother who was the patient, and she called and said, "Help me. I think my kids are trying to kill me." She had a fairly large estate, and you can imagine how it was. And we were able to get her 6 months down the road, but the reality was is she gave a child the power of attorney who really actually did want her estate. It's like right out of a movie. It's creepy. But we get those calls on a regular basis now in our culture.
That's right. And our laws are allowing this. This is, again, when we were fighting assisted suicide, I said basically Agatha Christie stories are going to be meaningless because that's everyday life now. It's that common. And it is motive. And we're talking about killing. And that people can't see that and see the great danger of legalizing killing, and it's almost always a family member that approves. So this is incredible. It's incredible, and for people to not wake up to that is frightening. We're going to keep telling the truth and telling those stories that illustrate it. I like the fact, as I said, we talked earlier, we live in a post-literate culture. People can read, but don't. Most communication comes over the screen, whether it be the computer screen, movie screen, the television screen, so they're seeing stories, they're getting messages, and they're buying into them. And unless we recognize that, we're going to lose. We have to do the same. We have to do it more effectively with the truth. Now, the truth is what helps us, but we still have to use tools to get the truth out. And I like the single images. They're very tastefully put together. All of your stuff is image heavy. That means you understand our culture. And then you have the right words to, as you said, to pull out that meaning and underscore the deeper meaning. So it's very important that if you're a pro-lifer listening to this, or maybe you're not, maybe you came across this radio program and you go, what is this about? But you're alive, and I bet you're glad you're alive. I hope you are, because life has such depth and warp and woof and texture that as you taste it and participate in life, you realize what a gift it is. Well, the Right to Life movement is just like you, people like that. We appreciate being alive. We see there's more to being a human being than being an animal. So we're part of Western civilization. And we want to affirm the value of each and every life, the significance of every life, particularly the seemingly insignificant. That is what makes Western civilization. And Human Life Alliance does that with your educational materials. If someone wants to go online and see what's available, what would they do?
Well, just go to humanlife.org. It's a very simple thing. You can select the resources there. Like we said earlier, we provide these materials free for anybody who want to use them. If you go to the website, it will ask you if you'd like to make a suggested donation. But if you click on the no donation, then you get them shipped to you for free, and we're happy to serve that way.
That is so awesome. Again, these are really good materials. They're not sectarian. So I know this. Obviously, we're at a conference. We're underneath the the cathedral in San Francisco. This is a Catholic building, but I assure you the people here are from every denomination and some from no denomination whatsoever. They're human beings, and they care about this. The reason that churches care about it is that churches are supposed to care about human beings. It doesn't make it a religious issue. So this is a human life issue, and Human Life Alliance is well named along those lines. And you have a right to life that was taken away, believe it or not. It was your right to life that was assaulted in 1973, when the highest court in this land said, no, there's no right to life for a child that can't speak. We don't even think that's a human being. We're not sure what it is. And what Roe did is it redefined the law. And if you read Roe carefully and Doe v. Bolton, it's all about the woman. In fact, I was going to say mother. They don't refer to the term mother. And it's just about what does she want to do. And literally in Doe v. Bolton, if she's not in the mood emotionally for having a baby, kill it. You can kill that baby because of her emotional mood. Isn't that the case in this long-term care of that mother and her child wants the estate, and the child who wants the estate says, well, I'm just not in the mood to care for mom anymore. And that now is happening.
That's why it's so important to have the right kind of advance directive, a protective medical decisions document, so your loved one can speak to you. We had a deacon contact us from Massachusetts, and his wife was passing away. She had a heart attack. In Massachusetts, your spouse does not have a legal right to speak for you in the hospital.
What?
The doctor does. So imagine, as his wife is dying, he's standing before a judge trying to just get permission to speak for her and her beliefs.
It's frightening. And folks, if you haven't read about what's been happening in the Netherlands, in Belgium, in Switzerland, it's frightening. It's out of a dystopic novel, the scariest 1984 novel. Think of any dystopia you have heard of. It's actually happening. It's just not talked about by the pop press, by the pop media. But don't be led by the pop press. Don't be led by the pop media. Don't be led by the cultural institutions that have been tainted. And that's why we're fighting for culture. We're fighting for the laws. We're fighting for the culture, and we're fighting in the battle of ideas. And you're listening to Life Matters. We're here about life, about culture, and yeah, that very real battle of ideas. We'll be back right after this.
You're listening to Life Matters.
Hi, I'm Kevin Sorbo, and I was very excited when I heard about LifeFest Film Festival. LifeFest is the film festival dedicated to showcasing films that affirm the intrinsic worth of innocent human life and the profound significance of each life. One seemingly insignificant person can in fact change the whole world in which he or she lives. That one singular life ends up being of vital importance. I'm so glad to hear that you are cherishing that in this film festival and are committed to artfully and creatively protect the lives of those who can't possibly promote themselves.
Life Film Fest is dedicated to bring the message of life to Hollywood and to our culture. Go to lifefilmfest.com and get your tickets now. That's lifefilmfest.com.
Find out about the exciting cultural change impacting Hollywood. Go to lifefilmfest.com. And now back to more Life Matters with Brian Johnston.
We're back on Life Matters, and I'm talking to Joe Langfeld with Human Life Alliance. And Joe and I were just talking about the power of media. Those who listen to this program know the affection I have for the power of film. And you've got a great little film that's tied to a booklet you have. Tell me about that film.
Well, it's a great piece. It's 56 minutes long, so it's not like a full feature film. But it's based on our publication called Informed, which they can see at the website, humanlife.org. But that talks about end-of-life issues. It's kind of a patient's guide to critical care.
Yeah.
The great thing about the DVD or the film version is that you can not only just read in the publication the personal stories of people, you can see them deliver their personal story. You can watch the expression on their faces. So one young woman, if you recall the Brittany Maynard story,
Yes.
you know, how terrible glioblastoma is going to decimate her. So instead of fighting, you know, a lot, just moved to kill herself, you know,
Yeah.
to let somebody do that for her. Well, we have a story from a young woman who had glioblastoma but chose to fight it, and why she chose to fight it, and what it meant for her family. And you're looking at her husband and her son sitting there while she's having this discussion with a doctor and what they're going to do. It can change your reality of how you perceive things when you know that these aren't issues, they're situations in people's lives.
That's right.
So that's called informed as well. A
Yes.
life is worth living, if you
So
know the
they
phrase.
can get the brochure informed, and they get the film informed. Very powerful tool. I like that you went after the Brittany Maynard story. Again, that was the media trying to win your mind. And the Brittany Maynard situation, you may not realize it, but that particular blastoma, as serious as it was, is being treated and was at the time being treated at Duke University and being cured. But the media didn't tell you that. They didn't put that into the story, that there was hope. And remember, hope is actually an emotional state of being. So when a doctor says, when a family member says it's hopeless, they're not talking about the actual condition. They're talking about an emotional decision. And it's very important that you not be seduced by the emotions that surround our lives every day, really, but particularly when you know that you're going to die soon, and we should all know that, by the way. I'm hoping to not get hit by a truck as I leave here. But when you realize it, the emotions are powerful. Don't be seduced by those emotions. And again, your media, the pop media, they have an agenda. And Human Life Alliance wants to clarify that. And you can go to HLA.
Humanlife.org is the website, but you can even watch Informed right on YouTube. Just go to YouTube, type in Human Life Alliance, our name, and you'll see all our videos on there. You can watch it in its sequence. You can use it in your church, and if you have problems with bandwidth, ask us to send you out a DVD. We're more than happy to. Everything we do is free. You can request it online at humanlife.org.
Excellent. And you know, that means you can watch it on your cell phone. And if you're listening to this right now and you have your cell phone, you can actually text right now to the California Pro-Life Council. We will get access to you for local information down to local school board candidates. That's for Californians. And if you're out of state, we'll give your information to your state affiliate of National Right to Life so that when you go to the polls this year, you can know who the pro-life candidates are down to the school board level, because that's where Planned Parenthood actually operates. They elect school board members, and it's school boards that release children to that organization for abortions. And if you don't want that happening, you need to elect people on the local level, and then, of course, on the county and city, on the state, national level. So it isn't just Congress and the president. We're glad that we have a pro-life Congress and a pro-life president, but unless you get active locally in bringing about change, things won't change. Human Life Alliance is working for that change, and we're so proud that they're working for life, and so glad to have you in the battle, Joe.
Great to be with you, Ryan. Thanks so much.
Well, it's very good to have spoken to Joe about culture and how Human Life Alliance is addressing the culture and communicating culturally. But I think it's important to understand the nature of culture. You know, I live on the banks of the Sacramento River, and it's the largest river in the state of California, where the Sacramento River is joined by the American at the confluence of those two rivers, is where the town of Sacramento was founded. And that's because it was the furthest inland. You could actually come up from the sea through the bay and come inland with ships to Old Sacramento. Actually, that's how the 49ers, a lot of them got here. Now, back to how that impacts culture. Culture is a lot like a river. Culture flows. Culture is the result of contributing factors and streams that are upstream. Little rivulets, little rivers, creeks, tributaries contribute to a larger river, and that's the case in your culture. So these rivulets, sometimes they're contaminated. Sometimes they're very, very pure. And I want you to understand that culture is that way. There's things in our culture that aren't good for you, and you know that. But the most important aspect of this stream, this river we live by and we draw our water from, our culture, is the fact that it has banks, because that's what defines the river. Now, at times, it may overflow its banks, but those banks will, once the waters have receded, those banks will reemerge. The banks for a culture are the laws of a culture. And in 1973, the Supreme Court threw out the laws regarding abortion. Every state in the nation had protective laws for those babies, but the Supreme Court threw them all out. The laws are critically important, and if you care about the vulnerable, if you care about human beings, as Joe and I had been talking about, and the cultural values we want to establish to protect those who are the unlovely, the seemingly insignificant, if you know that they are indeed significant, then you need to pay attention to the laws. The laws are there to help protect the flow of culture, what happens in that culture, make sure that it doesn't overrun its banks and destroy people and lives and property. And that's really what happens when laws are broken. That's what happens literally here in Sacramento if these levees break or if they're overtopped. It brings great harm. So it's true with our laws. Our laws are there to protect. As this is an election year, I want to remind you, wherever you are in the nation, to go to nrlc.org, because National Right to Life pays attention to these laws on the federal and on the state, and yes, on the local level. In fact, I want to invert perhaps your view of voting and the culture, because all politics is local, just as all culture is local. The contributions and the involvement that you make locally impact the bigger culture. If you go to nrlc.org, you can find your state's affiliate. That's important because it allows you to be involved in building up the banks of our culture, building up the levees, building up the protective nature of what's flowing through our lives so that people are not harmed. We have to pay attention to the laws. We have to pay attention to politics. So if you go to nrlc.org, find your state affiliate wherever you are, and there's an affiliate in each of the 50 states. It's there to equip you, to help you locally. Again, looking at how politics works, you may not believe it, but just a handful of votes turns many elections, but that's much more common on the local level. So I'm not even talking about city council or supervisors in a county. I'm talking about school boards. And you know, Planned Parenthood targets school boards. That's how they get at kids. And very often it's that school district's policies that determine whether they give access to the children. So it's very important that in this election year, get involved with National Right to Life. Make sure that the protections that need to be in place for our culture, that they're there. And the way to do that is to understand the need for good and just laws and understand your need for civic involvement. I mentioned school boards because if you get involved in local school boards and find out who the pro-life candidates are, that person who wins sometimes by 5 or 10 votes, these are some of the smallest jurisdictions in your state is on the school board level. Well, everyone who votes for a pro-life school board member is going to vote for a pro-life city council member. And anyone who votes for those two is going to vote for the pro-life county supervisor and for the pro-life state assembly and state senate and for the pro-life candidate for Congress and for the pro-life candidate for governor and, yes, for the pro-life federal offices all the way up to president. So by getting involved and helping your community be aware of the cultural war we're in, the cultural values, and you can make a difference right where you are. Go to nrlc.org.
Learn more about everything in today's show online at lifematters.life, where you'll find all the resources you need to protect life. Life Matters is a production of the California Pro-Life Council, the state affiliate of National Right to Life.